Hey guys, Nick Espinoza, your chief security fanatic here, and it is Sunday, so we are doing breaches of the week. And as always, I've got a ton of notes, and I would like to thank the following people once again because, guys, you've all been on my list before, and you all saved me time. And that's Chris Fellon, Neville Goodalls, and Rebecca Rutherford. Always appreciative. And if you have tips, please send them my way. But no time to waste. Let's dive right in. The first one we're going to be talking about is a company called Hostinger. Now, Hostinger is one of the largest web hosting providers on the internet, and they just disclosed that they have a security incident that impacted their platform and users. In a blog post a couple of days ago, the company said that a hacker gained access to an internal server where he found an authorization token for an internal API, which he later used to make API calls affecting information about clients. Now, the company said that this database basically contained personal information of about 14 million customers and had things like usernames, customer IP addresses, first and last names, contact information like phone numbers, email addresses, home addresses, etc. And so Hostinger is forcing password resets on everybody. And if you use them, heads up to you. Moving on, we're going to be talking about a company called Filial Coop. Now, this is a pension loan provider out of the country of Colombia. They are basically looking at a data leak of more than 54,000 recordings of customer calls, obviously, which may have very pertinent bank information. If you've ever called your bank, a lot of times they're asking for very personal information to verify who you are. That's a serious problem. So if you use Filial Coop in Colombia, heads up. Moving on, we're heading to TGI Fridays. This is a pretty popular American fast food, or not fast food, but American restaurant chain. But we're talking about TGI Fridays in Australia, because apparently it's down under as well. Now, customers of TGI Fridays Australia were strongly recommended to change their My Fridays membership rewards passwords. Now, according to an email sent to customers this week, the company had inadvertently left sensitive loyalty program exposed on the internet. Publicly exposed data included backup files containing data related to the Australian customer program. This did not include any financial information, and there has not been any malicious data breach or hack. So if you're in Australia and you're a frequenter of TGI Fridays, heads up to you. Moving on, we're going to be talking about Foxit. Now, Foxit, you may know, makes an alternative PDF reader as well as some other stuff. They just basically announced that they have a data breach. And basically, the stolen data includes users' website passwords. So Foxit admitted that the data breach basically was by third parties, and it had access to the My Account user data. So if you have anything to do with Foxit or a My Account user on Foxit's website, heads up, you might have been hit. Moving on, we're going to be talking about Russell Stover Chocolates. They're a candy maker, I believe, in the United States. They announced Friday that a recent data breach at its stores potentially affected the information of basically credit and debit cards. There's no evidence that the hack impacted online payments, according to the company. Now, the company determined that an unauthorized user basically was able to implant malware into their point of sale system between February 9th and August 7th, and obviously collect information, payment data, first and last names, credit card numbers, expiration dates, etc. They said that there's no evidence that this information was used improperly. They always say that. We never know. And basically, they started the investigation once they determined this. So if you have anything to do with Russell Stover, meaning you've walked into one of their stores and bought stuff, heads up to you. Moving on, we're actually going to be talking about the cybersecurity firm Imperva, and this is surprising, but they have a web application firewall that apparently has been breached in terms of customer information. This WAF, or web application firewall, used to be called Encapsula, so some of you may know it by that. And I quote, "We want to be very clear that this data exposure is limited to our Cloud WAF products." Now, this leaked data includes email addresses and hash-consulted passwords for all Cloud WAF customers who registered before September 15th of 2017. So this goes back. If you are a long-term member of Encapsula or Imperva, go change your password. Moving on, we're going to be talking about a place called Carl's Gulfland. Apparently, this is in Detroit. It was as reported by the Detroit Free Press. Hackers from Singapore, Germany, and Romania, so they were wide open, stole credit card information for numerous online shoppers from Carl's Gulfland. And basically what they're saying is a hacker did a brute force attack to gain unauthorized access to the computer system, basically getting names, addresses, credit card information, expiration dates, and the 3-digit CVV codes on the back. This hack was between March 25th to July 14th of this year, and when they became aware of this, they obviously notified authorities. So if you have ever shopped at Carl's Gulfland, heads up to you. Moving on, we're going to do some categorizations here because we have a lot of different categories and verticals in the world that are getting hit. And the first one we're going to be talking about are the governments or government entities that have been hit as reported this week. First one comes from Canada, their Border Services Agency. Now, we know that earlier in the summer, U.S. Customs and Border basically had one of their vendors, Perceptix, compromised in a security breach that grabbed license plates and all of that. Canada just disclosed that their border service agency also uses Perceptix, and they are now investigating. Moving on, we're going to the state of Oregon in the United States. A phishing scheme succeeded in breaking into the email accounts of 5 Judicial Department employees in the state of Oregon, exposing personal information of more than 6,000 people. So if you have anything to do with the state of Oregon, heads up to you. Moving on, we're going to be talking about healthcare now. This is probably one of the biggest breaches of the week. The Dental Digital Record and PerkSoft or PerCsoft are basically 2 Wisconsin-based companies who collaborate on DDS Safe. This is a medical records retention and backup solution that is advertised to dental offices in the United States. Obviously, a ton of dental offices use this. A ransomware gang compromised the software provider and deployed ransomware into customer systems. So in other words, they got so deep into this system that they were able to then start infecting dental systems across the United States. Now, the 2 companies opted to pay the ransom demand. That would be Digital Dental Record and PerCsoft. And they basically are sharing the decryption key with dental offices and trying to help out as best they can, obviously to save their customer base. But if you're a dentist and you're using this, heads up, your data may have been compromised. Moving on, we're talking about the Providence Health. Now, they have basically a dental plan, and as many as 122,000 people may have been compromised in a security breach, and they're basically declaring this. So they don't really know the timing of the breach, but it may have started up to 9 years ago. In other words, somebody might have been exfiltrating data for quite some time. So if you have anything to do with Providence Health, heads up. Moving on, let's talk about schools and higher education, because quite frankly, we have a lot of these as well. I mean, we just keep going here. Rockville Center School District in Long Island, New York, paid almost $100,000 when they got hit with ransomware that encrypted their files. The Mineola, Syracuse, Watertown, and Lansing, New York school districts also got the same infection. Regis University, a cyber attack there. They're out of Northwest Denver. They shut down the campus's internet, and that basically the shutdown began as of Tuesday. Now, as of Sunday, which I believe is today, the university's email accounts, online programs, and class schedules remained unavailable, and they haven't said where they're going back online. Hopefully that was last Sunday and they're back online now, but I'm just reading my notes here. Monroe College in New York City was just asked to pay ransom for about $2 million in Bitcoin to restore their college's website, management system, and email. And so the institution says they don't know if they're going to pay this or not. They're in the middle of a breach remediation. The new Kent County Public Schools also had a ransomware attack. Don't know much more about that. That's all I could find. And Huntsville, Alabama. This is an interesting one. A Facebook post of a former Huntsville school board member has basically grabbed the attention of that school district. Now, Pam Hill, who is a school board member, posted this past Thursday that an Alabama school system was hacked. She also said in the post, parent, teacher, and student information was stolen. She also said the ransom was paid. Hill isn't saying which school system was hacked, and Huntsville hasn't declared that. So if I get any kind of information, I will let you know. Moving on, let's talk about Pearson. If you remember this was a major hack from a publisher that supplies just millions of students across the United States for school districts, and every week I update you on Pearson. So now we've got Moravia Central School District in New York, Calhoun City Schools in Georgia, and Boulder Valley District School District in Colorado, all declaring that they were hit by Pearson. In terms of the AMCA, that's the American Medical Collection Agency that got Quest, LabCorp, and a ton. This week, we had a new declaration of one of their former customers. Wisconsin Diagnostic Laboratories declared a HIPAA data breach by virtue of AMCA for 114,985 patients. So heads up to you Wisconsinites there. Moving on, let's talk about the Apple iPhone. I actually did my video on this yesterday, but basically, Apple people, you are not immune from hacking. And for about 2.5 years, thousands of users every week basically had their information stolen, very deeply when hackers were exploiting 14 bugs in iPhone operating systems, which Apple patched on February 7th of this year. So if you have an iPhone, please update it. Ironically and humorously, it was Google's Project Zero security team that found the flaws. So friendly competition, but I'm glad Google alerted Apple, and I hope Apple would do the same. Excuse me. Moving on, let's talk about Twitter. Twitter's CEO, Jack Dorsey, had his account hacked on Friday afternoon, basically by a group that's calling itself the Chuckle Squad. Now, the Chuckle Squad also has hit YouTubers in the past, but in this case, the hackers tweeted racial slurs, anti-Semitic messages, and at least one Holocaust denial from Dorsey's account. Now, some of these tweets were up for about 10 minutes or so, but obviously Twitter moved to remediate fast and lock down Dorsey's account. I hope he had MFA, or now does anyway, but apparently the Chuckle Squad's a bit of jerks because what they're posting really isn't funny. Moving on, and the last bit of information for the day, and I thought this was absolutely interesting, was, I'm a little under the weather today if you couldn't tell, is President Trump. Now, President Trump apparently has caused a mini data breach of his own, and here's why. President Trump tweeted what experts say is almost certainly an image from a classified satellite or drone showing the aftermath of an accident in an Iranian space facility, obviously in Iran. Now, NPR broke the news of this launch on this past Thursday using images from commercial satellites that flew over Iran's Imam Khomeini Space Center. These images showed smoke billowing from the pad. Iran has since acknowledged the accident on the site. Now, some of the higher resolution imagery available basically comes from a company called Maxar, whose Worldview 2 satellite basically has a 46 centimeter resolution. But the image that that appeared in President Trump's tweet appears to be far better quality. Now, this is coming from Ankit Panda. He's an adjunct senior fellow at the Federation of American Scientists who specializes in analyzing satellite imagery. And I quote Mr. Panda, "The resolution is amazingly high. I would think it's probably well below 20 centimeters, which is much higher than anything I've ever seen." Panda says the tweets disclose, and I quote, "some pretty amazing capabilities that the public simply wasn't privy to before this." Now, the Office of the Director of National Intelligence referred basically questions about this to the White House, and the White House is declining to comment. But by virtue of this, apparently this tweet shows just how accurate and capable U.S. intelligence satellites are, and the world didn't necessarily know that. And so here is a mini data breach by the president on Twitter, and I thought that was absolutely fascinating. I don't care what your politics are, from a cyber warfare standpoint and intelligence standpoint, I cringe at that, but I also find it interesting. So that was your data breaches of the week, or those were your data breaches of the week. Were you affected? Let me know. And please like, share, follow me here on Facebook and Twitter at NickAESP, and please feel free to subscribe to me on YouTube. And as always, stay safe and stay online. Thanks, guys.